So that night, after an intense vibrating period, that night or early the next morning again, after intense vibrating, I opened my eyes and my ceiling was covered with stars. There were stars everywhere in my room. And I say my room, but I know I was in a different dimension somehow, but I was still on my bed. And there were hands on my head, and they were stroking my head and hair and conveying without words, again, this most profound unconditional love and forgiveness. I know that I was being forgiven for all of those, I don't want to say sins because that's not a word I use, but all of those, transgressions. And, my bed is right up against the bedroom wall. And the next day I was telling a friend of mine about this whole experience. And I said, he was behind me. I mean, there's no room behind me. And she said, God does not need walls. Sorry, God does not need walls. So that was...
Good evening and welcome to the show, Earth to the Other Side. My name is John Glasspool, your host. And tonight, special night, we often talk about near-death experiences on this channel, but and which, we are totally planning to continue with. But tonight's a special night because we're actually going to talk about STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, which are equally profound and fascinating. So here to share some of her own STEs is my guest, Charlotte Ritchie. Thank you so much for being on the show, Charlotte. Welcome.
Thank you, John, for having me. And I just start by telling about myself, and then I'll go into my story.
Sure. Okay? Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm 67 years old, and I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. I've been here all my life. I was born here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the background because I know it's important to get into really the meat of what happened. But some of the background is necessary to show you how I was led into this in this direction. And what happened is I was raised as an Episcopalian, but I went to a Catholic school. And so I never had any real, I was never inclined toward faith. I always wanted to, I always thought highly of Jesus, and I sought Jesus often during my high school years because I was I became an alcoholic at an early age, at the age of 12. And I have now been sober in AA for 41 years. But during the time that I was drinking, I was an absolute wreck. And I was a lost soul, and I was a menace to humanity because I was a crazy driver, and I was just a teenager out of control. And I was also very lost and very sad. And I would often turn to Jesus in a drunken stupor. But I remember asking him, if Jesus would please help me out of this and that situation. But eventually, so then I got sober in 1981, and I sort of started to go the AA way, which is to seek a higher power. And for the first 37 years of my sobriety, so until 2018, I was really what I would always say was an agnostic with an open mind. I always was open to the idea of a higher power. I sought a higher power, but I never actually settled down to do meditation, which is part of the AA program. Is meditation and prayer are recommended. I often prayed, but I never felt a profound connection with a higher power. I just knew there was one, and I wanted to find that. And so my life was about seeking. Well, the other important thing I need to say is that in 2008, I became very, very ill with recurrent acute pancreatitis, which is ironic considering it's a disease of alcoholism. But I got it, decades after I stopped drinking. But it was diagnosed as being caused by other reasons. But anyway, I was in the hospital over and over and over for long periods of time. And I'm now, and I had to stop working in 2008 because I couldn't work anymore. But my job was as a hospice nurse. So I spent the last part of my career, just under a decade working with the dying. And I loved it. It was a career that I put my heart and soul into. And I loved it. And I was so sad that it had to end because of my own poor health. And I live with a feeding tube in my abdomen because I just can't eat. So basically, so I have to be fed through a feeding tube. So that's the background. So starting in 2011, finally, after all those years of sobriety, in February 2018, February 2018, one day I just lay down on this very couch here, sat up kind of with my legs in front of me, and I started to breathe in light and breathe out fear with my eyes closed. And I focused on that little ball of light that you see between your eyes. And some people call it the third eye. I think that's what they're referring to. And for me, it just was amazing. So for that first time of meditation, I meditated for about 10 minutes. And actually, I felt very relaxed afterward, very connected, just very like I had meditated, but there's nothing dramatic that happened right away. However, what started happening, it was just awesome. And I was awakened at 2 a.m, maybe 3 a.m, with my whole body vibrating. I mean, intensely vibrating. It felt like a jackhammer, but in a gentle way. And at the time, the first time it happened, I thought, wow, where do I recognize this from? And I kept trying to think, was this in my child? Did I have this happen in my childhood? Eventually, I realized this had happened never in this realm. It must have been in a different dimension and a different lifetime. But anyway, I figured that out later on. But what happened when I was vibrating the first time, so all of a sudden I was very relaxed and just in a different frame of mind. And something in me told me to turn my head to the right. And when I did, there was this enormous sphere of light that looked like a moon. It looked like a coral colored moon. It was the most magnificent color of orange coral I'd ever seen. In fact, I don't think I'd ever seen it before. And it was, I say enormous, but it could fit in my bedroom, but it covered the shutters. It was so big. It was maybe 5 or 6 feet in diameter. And I was just looking at it so intently because it occurred to me that this moon was perfect. It was perfection in every way. And I don't know how to describe that, but it was very much alive because there were currents of movement and it's hard. It glimmered and shimmered in this amazing way. And I just took it all in. And then it probably wasn't there very long, but right before it disappeared, appeared a smile, a one-line smile. And it smiled at me and it was just infusing me with love. And it was the most magnificent thing I'd ever experienced in my life at that moment. And then it disappeared. And that was that. And then gradually my body and myself went back to its normal state. And I went back to sleep eventually. But what I understood the next day when I was doing all kinds of research, I'd never had something like that happen. I realized that, this is the first time, but that confirmed to me that there was that there was another realm of existence. And it was just, if nothing else had ever happened after that, that one experience in and of itself was enough to let me know there was a being of love. There was another realm of existence. It was just fantastic. And then what started to happen over the next 2.5 years was that the veil between this side and the other side almost opened up for me, but it just, I would say it thinned because it wasn't constant. I don't think anyone could handle a constant relationship with the other side, but it was this intermittent relationship where every couple of months something spectacular would happen. So I'm going to skip ahead to July of 2018 when, again, it was the intense vibrating. I had meditated in the afternoon, and I always knew when I was doing the meditating that when the light behind my eyes started to grow, get bigger, flicker. And it was sort of an yellowish gold light. And a couple of times it was a purplish light. It would start to get bigger. And I knew I had made a connection. And somehow, but then I wouldn't see anything right after the meditation. So again, it was early morning awakening. And this time I felt arms and hands close to my legs, like touching my thighs and my calves, like trying to move them. And they were spiritual arms. That's all I can say. And I just knew that. And I just went with the flow. And the next thing I knew, I was floating in I would say being lifted into the air in my bedroom. And I could see myself from my bed. I could see myself in the air. And I could also look back and see myself on the bed. And then something happened. And the next thing I knew, I was in the night sky. And I was in the same position I had been when I was on my bed. My head was elevated about 30 degrees. My legs were extended in front of me. And there were arms around me from behind and holding me. And we were moving slowly through the sky and the night sky. And while this was happening, these arms and hands were sort of moving around me, loving me in a way that was, again, it was what I could call perfect. Every time I tried to think, are these male or female hands? They would move in such a way that I could not tell. But from behind me, this being was generating this most wonderful love and compassion. I could feel it go through my skin into every cell in my body. It was wonderful. And at one point, without words, this being was saying to me, first of all, I felt like the most beloved being in the universe. That's how I felt, because there was so much love coming into me. I couldn't imagine, I just couldn't imagine not being the most beloved person in the universe because of the amount of love I was receiving. And at one point, without any verbal communication, it was conveyed to me that, Charlotte, you are so loved, and you were even loved when you were in high school at your worst. You were always loved. And that just made me feel so good because it was so beautiful. And then just out of the clear night sky, I heard my own voice resounding through space, saying something that I did not think of to say. But the words in my voice were, "But where's Jesus?" And with that, a young man in his maybe late teens or early 20s came out from beside me and waved at me, and then went back behind me. And before I go on, I want to show you, because the next day I looked online for what Jesus really looked like. And one of the pictures that came up right away was this. Can you see that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looked like, except the Jesus I saw did not have the facial hair, but he had the exact same hair and coloring. And he looked like a combination of Middle Eastern and African kind of, and he wasn't that tall, and he was wearing like a white tunic or beige tunic. And I didn't see his entire body. I just saw his torso, and he waved at me. And then he went back behind me and held me, and our speed picked up, and we zipped through the night sky and kind of quickly. And then he took me back into my bedroom, and I don't remember this part, how we got back in or anything, but the next thing I knew, I was back on my bed, but I could feel the hands come out from underneath me just ever so slightly. It was I never left, but I knew I had left because it was so slight, but I had been left back on my bed. And again, it was just entirely, I know. I stood up and said, "Where did you go, Jesus? Where did you go?" And I got really teary, because tears of joy. I mean, it was so beautiful. So that was the next one. And then in September of 2018, I was standing in my hallway one afternoon, and I started having was like a slideshow across my mind of a period in my life of which I am not proud, and which started flickering, like going past me in different scenarios. And it was all this stuff that I had done that I felt guilty for. And anyway, so that night, after an intense vibrating period, that night or early the next morning again, after intense vibrating, I opened my eyes and my ceiling was covered with stars. That there were stars everywhere in my room. And I say my room, but I know I was in a different dimension somehow, but I was still on my bed. And there were hands on my head, and they were stroking my head and hair and conveying without words, again, this most profound unconditional love and forgiveness. I know that I was being forgiven for all of those, I don't want to say sins because that's not a word I use, but all of those, transgressions or, I can't think of another word, but transgressions. And I know that I was being forgiven. And again, I hadn't made the connection that this being was Jesus until much after this happened. And now, even when I made my first audio on the other channel, I still wasn't sure if it was an angel or Jesus, but now I know it was Jesus. The hands were familiar, the whole thing, it was connected. And I never saw him that night because he was behind me. And, my bed is right up against the bedroom wall. And the next day I was telling a friend of mine about this whole experience. And I said, he was behind me. I mean, there's no room behind me. And she said, God does not need walls. Sorry, God does not need walls. So that was a nice thing. And anyway, so that was that experience. And then I'm going to skip ahead because the next one was in June.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Oh, anytime. Yeah.
Have you seen this picture yet? I don't know if you can see it.
That's horrible. The one that Akiani or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It has a certain similarity.
It really does look similar to yours. It's unbelievable. That's the first thing I thought. The hair is different, but I mean,
and the skin color is different. The eyes are different, but
right.
Yeah.
But there's something about the face that looks very similar.
Yeah, the Jesus that I saw was almost identical, but there was a slight difference in the nose, but 90% same Jesus.
I think that a lot of people see Jesus differently, and I don't think it takes away from their experience and who Jesus is. I think maybe that he just presents himself however, and this seems to be a common denominator on a lot of levels when it comes to the other side. But when it comes to meeting Jesus, just from the experiences that I've seen and that with people that I've spoken to, it seems as though he kind of just appears and manifests himself in the most relatable way to that person, that soul.
Isn't that true? Yeah. That's amazing.
I think
when I did that other audio and I mentioned that Jesus looked more African than he did Nordic, I got a lot of nasty comments, and I was upset by that because it seemed racist, but I quote should have mentioned that he looked Middle Eastern / African to me.
What does it matter if he looked like a Martian? I mean, what's the
exactly. But
people need to chill out.
Yeah,
they're so used to seeing him portrayed as Caucasian. First of all,
it's what he conveys, and my gosh, he is so sweet and so this unbelievable love.
Yeah. When you had your first experience, and you went through the vibrational stage, did you also experience any sort of two things? Noise? Was there any loud noises like an airplane engine kind of right by your ear? Not painful, but just really loud. Okay. And did you also
there was a buzzing. I would say there was a loud buzzing by one ear. When I saw that moon, it was my right ear. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the sounds. I'll get more.
No, that's okay. Did you have any body paralysis?
No.
You didn't feel like you were pinned down or anything?
Oh well, what happened was the vibrating was so intense that one time I just had this thought: I'm going to try to move my left arm. And it was the weirdest thing. I couldn't move it. It was gelatinous. I mean, it was very strange, but it didn't scare me in the least. I loved all the vibrating. It was so it felt so normal and so much a part of my life, but I don't understand what, I explained that what I just figured out was that it comes from another realm of existence that I had experienced at another time. So
And you said that it felt like spiritual arms, which I'm also familiar with. It's really cool. I like the way you expressed it. But you mentioned something sort of about skin and body, and which just led me to wonder whether or not you had like a light body at the time, or were you still in your physical body during the second experience?
no, I mean, when I was with Jesus out in the sky.
At the beginning, you had mentioned about you felt them lifting you, right? And
Yes.
then
Yeah, I think that was my soul that went out in the night sky, and my body was on the bed, but I was able to go back, and I was able to see my body, and I was able to see my soul, which looked exactly like my body.
right.
I can't explain it, but it was definitely my soul floating through the night sky with Jesus, but it was me. It
Beautiful.
was, yeah.
Mm.
So in May 2019, I had the most magnificent experience with God. And what happened was I was, I had done the usual meditating, and at between 2 or 3 in the morning, I just started intensely vibrating. And then after the vibrating, I noticed that I thought we were having an earthquake because I live in California. I thought an earthquake was starting, or it kind of sounded like a train coming in the distance, and the whole room was trembling. But I knew that it wasn't an earthquake. It just kind of felt like that. And then the next thing I noticed was there was a warm tropical breeze blowing across my face. It was utterly divine, is what I can say. And there were 2 beings on my bed next to me. I could hear them saying, ooh, ah. And what I realized was that they were here to witness what was unfolding in front of us. And I think they may have been angels. I'm not sure, but they were, unquestionably benevolent, and nothing in me wanted to turn and look at them. I just trusted. And so these clouds of sort of, orange coral colored light were swirling above us in a most beautiful way. And then they eventually morphed into a spiral ball of whitish, goldish light. And the light was God. And I knew that right away. I knew even before the light came that this was God, with the trembling and the vibrating and the room, rumbling. It was so powerful. All of it was so much power. And, it was kind of like, when you're in a plane, it was just about to lift off the runway, and you're kind of thrust back and everything is vibrating. It had that kind of power to it. And so eventually, and also in the background, there was this, I want to say, a humming sound, but it was a beautiful sound, and it was not in any way distracting from what was going on. So this ball of light appeared above me, and I don't know if it was 10 feet above or 10 miles above, but I knew it was God. And God connected to my torso in a field of energy that I could not see, but I could feel. And through the energy was the most beautiful thing. God was conveying to me this pure, light-hearted love that was so intense and so magnificent. And God was speaking to me through my skin, and I could feel, not hear, but feel the words. You are so sweet. You are so loved. You are so sweet. And at one point, it was just so delightful that I started to giggle, and God felt lighthearted to me. I could feel God, not giggling, but smiling. And it was just so beautiful. And so I don't know how long this went on, there's an energy absorption, but it may have lasted 10 minutes or an hour or more. I just don't know. But anyway, eventually it stopped. And when it stopped, the light disappeared, and it was followed immediately by my room being lit up by stars, just thousands of stars again. And it was magnificent. And just as I was saying, oh, how beautiful. Just as I finished that, the stars disappeared. And, they sort of followed God in a way. I mean, they all went together in a sort of twisted way. They sort of bent together. It was almost the feeling I had when I thought about it later was that God, the universe was moving with God. And that's what it felt like. And I mean, that's what it looked like and felt like. So that was, when that ended, I was so blissed out. And I had a period of hours where I felt totally healed from all of the problems I have with my chronic condition. And when Paul came over, my partner Paul came from the apartment next door to take our dog out, our late dog Lexi, at about 4 a.m. and I told him what had just happened, and he was just blown away. And he used to be an atheist, and after all my experience, he is not an atheist anymore. He's a believer. So that's really kind of cool.
Amazing.
And so that was my experience with God. And
is this God, is it the same God that you grew up with in Catholic school?
I would say that the God in Catholic school was a scary God, and that came through with, I had to take a class called Doctrine. And here I wasn't even a Roman Catholic, but I had to take that doctrine class. And a lot of it was about going to hell and, Jesus died for your sins, that kind of feeling. And so I always thought Jesus was very sweet, but I was scared of God. And, I was corporally punished by one nun in particular for, I was not a good girl. This was like in 6th and 7th grade, but nobody deserves to be beat up by a nun. And so that's kind of how I felt about God. I felt like they claim they're the brides of Christ, but they're, that they're the conduits to God and so forth. And it was really horrible. Some of them were just awful. So I had my impression of God from school was not good. So I wasn't one of those people that was angry at the church per se, but I just, by the time I was getting older, I just didn't want to be associated with Christianity. I never wanted to say I was a Christian because Christianity has caused so much divisiveness in this world and in this country. And I just, I always loved Jesus, and I always prayed to him when I was in my darkest hours, drunk, and hungover, asking for Jesus's help. But I never really thought of myself as just a Christian.
Do you think that some of this has to do with your experiences, like basically like how you feel about the church at this point? Is it reflective of your experiences, or is this happening before that?
Oh, well, my experience just changed everything for me. I mean, I went from being an agnostic to being not only believing in God, but knowing in God and Jesus. I mean, having encountered God and Jesus. I feel so fortunate. I go, how did I deserve this? I mean, it's just an amazing thing when it happens to you. And I'm no more special than anyone else. And yet I think there's a worldwide spiritual awakening going on. It's just, it's taking time, but people like you, channels like yours, and there's quite a number of others. There's a lot of movement, and this is all positive because it's not religious, it's spiritual. And then in December of 2019, I had another encounter with God. And this time it was, in my bedroom, and it was close to Christmas, and, the vibrating, the whole thing, the vibrating started, and suddenly my room started to fill up with these filaments and ribbons of light. It wasn't brilliant, bright light, but it was a soft, gentle light. So there were all these ribbons, lit up ribbons, seemingly floating around my room. And then all of a sudden, and by the way, before this happened, I was being pulled backwards and downwards in darkness by two beings that were pulling me really hard by my, right here by my elbows. And I screamed, well, I didn't scream, I said, stop, you guys are scaring me. So once they stopped, they did stop. And I returned to my recumbent normal position. And that's when all of the ribbons started to come. So obviously there were creatures that did not want me to see this light coming. And then right in front of me, in front of my TV, I have a big flat screen TV, and what looked exactly like a small version of our sun was right there in front of me, maybe 6 feet away from me, just radiating love and light and warmth, like the sun, not heat, not too hot, but warmth. And I knew right away that this was God. And the sun had no facial features, but I could feel this brilliant smile coming from the sun, from God. And I said, thank you, God, so much for all of this love. I love you so much, I said. And then that faded and it went away, but it was so incredible. And I felt healed after that experience by, just the beauty, the warmth of it. I can't even find the right words really to describe what I experienced, because it was so magnificent and so spiritual. Am I doing okay with it?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever had any, because you mentioned earlier about some dark experiences that you had. Did you want to talk about any of those?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Yeah. In May of 2020, our golden retriever, Lexi, had to be put down. And it was just a horrible thing for us. But 3 nights after she died, I was given a vision. And I've had quite a few, not quite a few, but several visions over these last few years that are not dreams, but they happen at night. But it's like being woken up and watching a TV screen at night, not like a screen. And what I was shown was Lexi, my dog, our dog, lying right next to a small German Shepherd with the German Shepherd had 1 ear up and 1 ear down, and it was a puppy. And Lexi was lying right next to her. They were both, head for how dogs lie down when they're looking out, their noses straight forward. And it lasted less than 5 seconds, but it was God showing me that Lexi was in heaven. It was magnificent. There was not, I could just see this sort of whitish, grayish background. It was hard to tell what the surroundings looked like. Not grayish, more whitish, but there she was. She looked so serene. She just looked like she belonged there. It was so neat. It was so beautiful. That gave me so much relief from the grief and so much knowledge that our animals do cross over and they go to heaven. Of course they go to heaven. Yeah. They are perfect, Yeah. So what was now I'm going to go into the dark entities, and I hope that anybody who could be scared of this would stop now and then come back later or something, because I should give you fair warning. In early August of 2020, I was awakened at 3 a.m. by not vibrating, but what I thought was light. And I started to open my eyes, but I heard from my right ear, about a few feet away from me, I heard the voice of a man saying, "God doesn't send you those stars, I do." And I opened my eyes and I looked to the right, and just about 3 feet away from that side of my bed was a young man about 6'2", 6'3". I don't know. He's really tall and very thin. I can tell you exactly what he was wearing. I can tell you what he looked like. And I knew the first thought was there's a murderer in my apartment. Somebody broke in, but right away, I immediately knew it was a demon. I knew that. I just knew it. And it was. And he walked around my bed, and then he was facing me. And he had said that about, he had said that about God doesn't send you these stars, I do. And he lifted up a small rinky-dink projector, and as if to show me that he was the one responsible for the stars. It was, I knew right away that it wasn't true, but I didn't say much, if anything, at that point. And then he went into my bathroom and he turned on the light in the bathroom. And I think he was doing that as a way of showing me that demons can move things, can control electricity, can make things change. And so then he came back, and he was slowly working his way around to my side of the bed. And as he got closer to my side of the bed, when I say my side, I mean this other side is empty. He got to my side of the bed, and he was up against my closet, and something in me, told me or made me say, I reached out my left arm and I said, "I love you." And I don't know why I said it, but with that, he started to crumble and fracture. And first of all, he got this look of horror on his face when I said that, just total disgust. And then he started to fracture and get smaller and just disappear. He just disappeared into my closet door. And it was terrifying. I mean, the next day I was on the phone with a chaplain, and I had a shaman come, and all kinds of people were talking to me about how this could have happened. And, and what I came to understand was that once you open a spiritual door, like I had, other darker entities can enter sometimes. And the second night was a different man. I woke up, and I was awakened because of pouncing on my bed, and he had a dog. He had a Cocker Spaniel, and he was lying on my bed, sitting up on my bed with one knee bent, like he was just making himself at home. And I woke up and I said, "Are you a demon?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "You have to leave right now. Get out of here. Go." And when I said, "Are you a demon?" he said, "Yes, I am a demon." And he got up. He said, "Okay." And then he and his dog got up and left. And I saw them walking down the small hallway toward the front door, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter. And they walked right through the front door. I mean, it was just so freaky. It was so creepy. The third night was more of an assault than anything else. And I don't think I'll go into it, but
really interesting, because I do a lot of astral projection the past several years, and somehow I came across the knowledge that if ever you encounter a dark being, which I never really have in any of my experiences, fortunately, but if ever you do, you're supposed to show love, and they're not interested anymore, and they'll take off. So that kind of piqued my interest when you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very helpful, because that's how the first one disappeared. But unfortunately, the demon story didn't end quickly, and I never saw them again in human form. But they have come back invisibly, and they can read my thoughts, and they've done some weird things. And for a long time, I was terrified of them. But I am at the point, I've become very immune. I mean, I'm not afraid of them anymore. And their power is diminishing. It's just, I don't want to say too much about that, because they want me to, I know they want to be talked about, they want attention and everything, and I don't like to give it to them, but it wasn't that easy. I was under what Catholics would call demonic oppression for a while there. They've been trying to separate me from God, because every time I would try to meditate recently, or, a few months ago, they would do something to stop it. And I gave up on it because of that for a while. I'm slowly moving back to it, but the demons were a terrifying thing. However, to anybody out there who thinks that all spiritual experiences are demonic in nature, they are completely wrong, because you can recognize the energy of love and divine and divinity, and I can recognize the energy of evil and cruelty. And first of all, the demons generate very cold, windy energy, and they also it's a very negative experience. There's no love, there's no nothing. I mean, it's so different. So I've seen in comment sections people say, "Oh, those are just all demonic. All spiritual experiences are demonic." And I not for 1 minute did I ever believe that. So anyway,
definitely not.
I could go on and on, but God has come back a couple of times since those demonic, but not with the same strength as before. And I've sort of gradually been tapered off of the veil being open. And now the veil is pretty much closed, but I feel God's presence. I feel Jesus. It's different. It's more normal now. It's not, but I think that, somehow, well, anyway, it's not like the demons have scared me enough to lose faith or anything like that.
Yeah. And the, just prior to having the demonic experiences, were you going through anything?
I would say so. Yeah, I was very tired of being sick. I really longed to join God. I just want to be with God. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. So there was a period there where I was considering the California End of Life Options Program for which I qualify if I stop my tube feedings, which is an end of life. It's like Oregon's physician assisted.
Yeah, we have that
dying.
here as well. My question is why you think you're getting these experiences, and why consistently at between 2 and 3 in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, what I've come to sort of understand is that's the time when we're most receptive, and when it's probably easiest to raise our vibration. I didn't understand what the vibrating was all about for a long time. I thought, what is that vibrate? Well, it's so obvious to me now that I've studied spiritual experiences for a while. It's my vibration was being raised each time.
Mhm.
And so in order to be in the same space as God, you have to be on a pretty high, at a high, you have to be vibrating at a pretty high rate. So that's what that was all about. I know that for sure now. And it has happened in every experience except with the demonic experiences. So of course, what I've learned, and I think what I've figured out is they are earthbound souls. They also go lower than earth, probably. They have, I mean, I don't know if it's called hell or whatever, but I'm sure they have a dark area where
I think it's just lower vibrational realms, and when you yourself, your earthly self, is in a lower vibration, or you're in a dark space, you could fall into these lower vibrational realms, I think is what happens.
Yes or no. I mean, what I think is the demons came to me because they don't like people developing relationships with God, and if they can interfere in any way, and somehow they were able to get into my space, they will try. I mean, I could tell you more about how all of that evolved, but I don't want to give them airtime, really too much more airtime, because they crave attention, and they also feed on fear. And when I was very fearful, that's when they were at their highest level of interaction. But now that I don't get as scared, it just doesn't excite them much, because my life is not like that. I mean, I'm not haunted by demons. It's not ongoing. It's not something that plagues me anymore. It was a period of time, and I felt very supported by this, by the spiritual, by God, by Jesus. There were times when I was like, "Where are you?" But now I know that they're right there. I just feel positive now about it. When I was working in hospice, it was very frequent that I would hear families and patients telling me about deceased relatives who were waiting for them. And that was so common among hospice nurses that we just took it in stride, took it for granted, because it was, I would say, in like 50% of my cases, I would have somebody in the family tell me that there had been a family member coming, or a sister who died as a baby and who came to greet this person. I mean, beautiful things like that. And for example, one night I had I wasn't with these people at the time these things happened, but I was their case manager, and so I would see them a couple of times a week, and I oversaw their care. And this night, particular night, when one gentleman died, his wife was in his room with him all night, and at one point he kept saying to her, "Sweetie, turn out the lights. It's too bright in here. Turn out the lights." And she said, "Honey, there's no lights on. It's very dark in here." And then shortly thereafter, he died. And, so things like that. And then one experience that I had myself before I started having these more recent and hugely impactful spiritual experiences, I had a vision. I was taking care of this patient. Well, she was my patient for almost a year, I think. Her name was Kitty, and she was very, very wasted from end-stage breast cancer. She was bald. She had a tumor on her spine, so she couldn't walk. She was skin and bones. And the night she died, I found out she had died the next morning, but I had this vision. Again, it was not a dream. It was a vision where I saw Kitty melting off of her hospital bed. She had a hospital bed in her room at home. And it was like a Salvador Dali painting where her body was just melted off the bed. And then within less than a split second, it was this angelic version of Kitty just appeared in front of me. And she looked so healed, healthy. She had glossy brown hair. I'd never seen her hair, but it was like an auburn brown, shiny, thick hair and pink cheeks, and she was wearing a satiny gown, and she looked so exquisite and so happy. And she looked right at me and kind of gave me a smile. And then, the vision ended. But it was such a gift for me to be able to see her like that. And that was something I've never forgotten. And that was just magnificent.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I was still an agnostic at that time. I still wasn't convinced. It took a lot more, but I'm sure
Well,
convinced now.
what did you conclude at that point?
At that point, I didn't conclude anything. I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was spiritual, but it didn't give me what I was searching for. It gave me something, but I realized what gave me what I was searching for was what happened between 2018 and 2022. 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and the way that it's being explained, how it's being conveyed as it's like they're like sort of filtering into the physical world. Like the veil is very thin, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, it's amazing. I often wonder, are they all around us, or are they above us, or I'm not quite sure how that works, because
I think they're just in a different space. So it's we just have to pick one. I choose it that they're just always 3 feet in front of me, no matter what. But they're just everywhere. Like there's nowhere. They're even in your table. They're just everywhere. It's energy.
Yeah.
But
There's times when I can just feel the presence of God.
Yeah.
And I always want to just go like right here. I can almost touch it. That's how close I can feel God. And that's without seeing anything. That's just knowing. And that's so beautiful. And God's everywhere.
Yeah,
with
and
everyone.
you're like obviously higher than average vibrating soul. And I'm curious as to like the nurses and the hospice nurses, especially. Like I wonder, the ones that see these things, are they tapping into a frequency that other people aren't? Are they vibrating at a, I guess, are they at a higher vibrational level to be able to witness these things? Because it's usually, from what I hear, it's not everyone that sees it.
Right. In fact, it was this lovely Irish nurse from Ireland who, lived in California, who had this incredible connection. She would always see the soul leave her patients, and she said it looked like smoke coming out of the head, the top of the head. So that's what she saw. But she was very, very a very high vibration person, I would say.
But thank you so very much for sharing your experiences with me. And if you have any more, feel free to let me know. And if you want to come back on and share them, I would be delighted.
Thank you. So it means so much to me. I really want to get my message out there. So I think people can get a lot out of it. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think everybody should be experiencing these things, and it all starts with meditation. All yours start with meditation. Meditation is so important.
Yeah. Are very dark entities.
Yeah.
But
well, stay away from them.
Yes, and then tell them and remind them to stay away from me.
I will. I'm going to pray for you tonight.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Great talking to you.
I'll pray for you too, of course.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, we'll speak soon.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.